Which one do you think is better? Dry heat or moist heat?
Moist.
Moist.
Hotter.
Why? The reason is this. Air is filled with many different pockets of air. In your oven, think about it. When you heat up your oven, water heats and boils at 212 degrees Fahrenheit. When your water is boiling, can you even get near that pot? You get near the steam, and from experience, I'll tell you, within seconds, you seriously get second-degree burn. Not paying attention, that steam hits you, you're done. But oven, 212, turn the oven 212, you can be in there stirring your stuff. After a while, yes, it gets uncomfortable and you're like, okay, I can't handle it. The reason is, air has different pockets in your oven. Some are 212. There are areas that are cooler. There are areas that are hotter. So on the average, your oven is 212, but your hand is hitting different pockets of temperature, so you can actually handle it. When you have steam, every water molecule is 212 degrees Fahrenheit. And that entire steam is filling up that area. Every single water molecule is that temperature. So it's much uniform, it's perfect. So that's why moist heat is better. You need to keep things at that temperature in lower amount of time, and you will sterilize it or whatever, but in the oven, you have to keep it way longer. So if you put it in boiling water and you just need to keep it there for 2-3 minutes, in the oven, most probably you have to keep it for, let's say, 10 minutes to make sure that it actually reaches 212. The other thing with the heat, moist heat, has to do altitude. That's the pressure. So when you lower the pressure, what happens is for water to boil, water goes from liquid to gas. That means you're increasing the distance between water molecules. If you lower the pressure, the distance already starts appearing. So at a lower temperature, the water boils. Whereas if it's like at the sea level, it has to reach 100 degrees Celsius. But in Lake Tahoe, which we are at higher elevation, water actually starts boiling at a temperature lower than 100 degrees Celsius. It starts boiling and turning into steam. I think it's somewhere around 80-something degrees. That's why it seems like it boils fast, but when you take that sip of tea up there, it seems like it cools faster up at Tahoe, whereas here, you can't even get near that tea. So it's just because of temperature. So when you're at a higher altitude, you keep it longer. One of the best ways was always boiling. So when you're boiling things, you just have to make sure that if you're doing it in Tahoe versus here, keep it there a little bit longer because the temperature is lower. The boiling affects all the enzymes to some degree. As you saw, it will affect the DNA, breaks the hydrogen bonds of the DNA. Eventually, it will break the covalent bonds, but it has to stay there for a long time. So it denatures DNA, it denatures all the enzymes, and even deals with the lipids, everything. So it's structural, it's biochemical, it affects everything. One of the best ways that we use moist heat is autoclaving. So we've talked about this before. The autoclave is basically a chamber. It's a glorified pressure cooker. So you add steam into a chamber, you lock the chamber, and that increase of the steam in there causes and the heat, constant heat, causes the pressure to rise. When the pressure rises, that resistance of the steam trying to separate versus the pressure causes the temperature of the steam to go even above 100 degrees Celsius. So the temperature of a steam inside an autoclave chamber is 121 degrees Celsius, which is very good for killing everything. So that's pressurized steam. These are some examples of, usually most of you guys in doctor's offices, dental offices, that's what you see. These are industrial levels. The other form of heat is pasteurization. The purpose again here is to lower the numbers. It's not sterilization. So the first two forms can actually give you sterilization. Again, we are ignoring prions. In this entire chapter, we're ignoring prions. So again, it could be the first two methods can completely sterilize. Pasteurization is not sterilization, it's disinfection. You're getting rid of some, but because you want to make sure the nutrients don't get damaged in the food, you're not going to take it to boiling point. So, and then there are different methods. In the old days, they raised the temperature to 63 and kept it at that temperature for up to 30 minutes. With technology, things are getting better. So typically, most things are flash pasteurized. So they take it up a little bit higher to 72 degrees and keep it there for 15 seconds or so. Your milk, everything that you see that you get from the refrigerator, they've been pasteurized this way. Now, there's creams that you go, they're at the table. They kept at the table. Those milk packets that you can actually find, like it's now soy milk, regular milk, that is liquid. It's not powder, but you can buy it from a shelf and store it not in the refrigerator until you open it. Those have been ultra high temperature sterilization or pasteurization. So ultra high pasteurization, they take the temperature really high to about somewhere between 135 to 140 degrees and Celsius and keep it there for about 1 to 3 seconds. That almost takes it to sterilization. Then they seal it really fast. So it can stay basically out of the refrigerator because we are assuming everything is sterilized. These are the ones that, however, have a very short expiration time. By the way, this is always where I talk about expiration times. Expiration time has nothing to do with microbes. Expiration time has to do with nutritional factors. So all these companies come and do a test and say, all right, this product that I have, if it remains sealed, like even the milk that is in the refrigerator, if you never open it, they have an expiration time. They say up to this day, I can 100% guarantee that when you drink this milk, all the nutritional factors that I've told you on the side, they will be like that. From this point on, the nutritional nutrients, they're gonna start decaying. So you might not get that level of vitamin D that I tell you you're gonna get from this milk. Does not mean that the milk is gonna be spoiled immediately. You can open a milk and if you keep drinking it, not pouring it in a glass from the container, you are introducing your bacteria in there. I promise you within 2-3 days that milk, it will be like 2 weeks till its expiration date, it will go bad. Why? Because bacteria will grow in it. So I see people, and then unfortunately drugs, supermarkets and all of that, they have to follow the rules and they have to remove it from the shelf. They donate it to places that they can use it immediately fast, but not always. That's why you see sometimes the price is reduced, and when you look at the expiration date, like it's gonna expire within a week or so. Like eggs, they do this, but the egg will be good for a very, very long time. Even the nutritional factors, nutrients, it will not go immediately. If it was October 11, on October 12th, it has no nutritional value. No, not at all. It's same with your medicines. Expiration date, ask any pharmacist. They're like, if it's a pill for a year after that, you're okay. It's just the guarantee and the suing and all of that stuff. And then it's also another way of making money. So expiration date, most of the time has to do with nutritional value, how potent the material are. These guys though, when it says expiration date is October 11th, few days after, these, because they've been heated, already the process of decaying of the nutrients starts, so they really lose their value fast. If you're sensitive to taste, even before expiration date, like my boys, whenever I gave them something like this during camping, they were like, it doesn't taste like milk. I was like, okay, it's okay, just drink it. But it's, the taste is just because of that high temperature. So heat, pretty much, even dry heat. So dry heat, you usually, not only you increase the temperature, but you keep it longer. And then the dry heat flame is that. So that's incineration, which is sterilization for everything. Because when you burn something with flames, you take the temperature to 1500 degrees Celsius. So heat, in most cases, except for pasteurization, is cidal. It completely destroys. The other side of heat is cool, colder temperature, refrigerators. Refrigeration is static. This is actually the way we store microbes in our research labs. Kim is not going to have live bacterial cultures going constantly. She actually freezes them in little portions when she wants it, like next week, next week we want E. coli, she'll take that frozen E. coli, puts it in a nutrient media. Within a night, overnight, the next day she has a nice culture of E. coli. So heat actually is static. It will cool it down. Refrigeration is about almost 4 degrees Celsius. That's why we always say, hey, don't take the food out, warm it, and put it back in. Because every time you warm it up, you might introduce bacteria to it. The bacteria grows, then you put it in the refrigerator, it halts. You warm it again, increases in the amount of bacteria.
You said heat is static?
No, heat is cidal.
Cidal.
Cooling, sorry, I might have.
Okay.
Cold temperature is static.
Okay.
Same thing even with freezing. When it comes to temperatures, we actually have cold, 4 degrees, or freezing. Freezing, actually, the slow freezers, like the cool freezers that we have, those can be good, because if you're freezing something very slowly, sometimes the sugars and the salts that they have creates crystals. And those crystals can have pointy and sharp edges, which can actually pierce the microbe. But ultra and rapid freezing, like throwing something in liquid nitrogen, again, it's completely static because it freezes very rapidly. Cryogenics, that's actually what they do. They put something in liquid nitrogen and freeze it. God, this room is hot.
It is getting warm.
Thank God it's not a hot day. Let me see if I open that. Hoping that. Now, the other thing that you can do is remove water from an environment. Every cell requires water. Most of our cytoplasm is water. So if you remove water from the cells, if you remove water from the environment, that organism will stop reproducing. However, the second it gets the water back, majority of them will start reproducing. So dehydration or desiccation. Dehydration and desiccation means the same thing. That is static. Examples that we've been using, beef jerky, is dehydrating. So you remove the water, and that's why beef jerky, if it remains dry, can be held for a very, very long time. And to make it even better, sometimes you add salt to it. Now, lyophilization, that one, means not only you dehydrate and desiccate, but then you immediately flash freeze it. You put it in liquid nitrogen. So again, it's halt, it's static, but not only you've removed water, but you've frozen it. So very, for keeping a virus for a long, long time, it's like smallpox, they eradicated, but they were supposed to get rid of it. But there are some labs out there in the United States, in Russia, and some of these big places, they have that virus in a ultra sub-freezers, lyophilized, completely water removed, and stored with liquid nitrogen. But they have it. So it will live forever. All right, so that's static. Degerming examples. So sometimes you can completely remove the microbe from the environment. Again, that's physical, right? Filtration is degerming. In filtration, for example, most of the time filtration is used for liquid, I mean all the time, liquid and gas. Filtration is actually used for water treatment companies. What they do is they get the water, first they pass it through natural filters, big rocks and all of that, then they pass it through the sand. Every time it goes through those, all the debris gets stuck and then they go. Then they have industrial huge filters and the water goes through that. Finally, at that point, then it's clean of every debris, then they add to it chlorine or ozone and all these materials to kill the microbes. So this is actually an industrial filter. These are staphylococcuses. See, they've gotten stuck on the type.
I have a question about the freezing. So I was just thinking about, I know how like I've heard that in like the glaciers or big ice caps, there's bacteria that has been frozen for like millions of years or whatever, and now that the ice is melting, does that mean that that bacteria is going to be able to reproduce, which is probably not great?
Well, it depends. If we have something similar to it, these are ancient bacteria. If it was a dangerous bacteria, yes, it's not good.
Yeah.
Like H1N1 flu that came, 1918 Spanish flu, that is basically took half of the world after World War I. They actually, when they had some victims that were buried below the glacier, so they went and found the bodies pretty much intact, and then they looked at their lungs and they extracted H1N1 virus to study and see why is it that that one killed so many people, but H1N1 now doesn't do that. So that's how they found it. It can keep it forever. Yeah. All right, so filtration. We can also use filtration for air. Those are HEPA filters. Those are your masks. So masks, they were like, okay, N95 is good because that mask, remember, it's so thick that it's breathing through it was hard. When you have a quarantine room, the air that goes into that room is filtered and the air that comes out of that room is filtered. Usually it's one room within a larger room, so that they actually even use the airflow, negative and positive, to make sure that nothing comes out. But that's HEPA filters. Those are filters for airs we can use. All right. Next thing, osmotic pressures. Use hypertonic environments. Most things, most of the pathogens, most of the microbes that are even with spoiling and all of that, they are not high, they don't like a very hypertonic environment. They live in a kind of an environment like we do. So this is why for the longest time we've been doing this. We've been pickling our food. We add salt to keep it for a long time. Like I said, like creating beef jerkies is a very good way of keeping even meat. And then to add it and make it even easier to keep it for a long time, they add a large amount of salt to the outside of it. Salt increases the osmotic pressure. So therefore the bacteria basically, they are placed in a hypertonic environment. You put a lot of osmotic pressure on it and they can't grow. Salt is actually much better. So pickling things is much better. Creating jellies is another way. Using sugar is another way for changing the osmotic pressure. But most bacteria, again, even don't like extremely high sugar levels. The issue is fungus. Some fungi really love that high amount of sugar. So that's why you see like your jellies and all of that, after a while you start seeing a fungus growing on the side. But it's another good way of keeping it pretty good. So playing with the osmotic pressure. But having said that, so a lot of preppers keep beef jerkies and things like that, and they will use pickling and all of that. The issue is, for example, even for the beef jerky, you have to make sure it remains dry at all times. So when you take a sample of beef jerky and you bite on it, you have to finish it fast. Why? Because where you put it in your mouth, it gets wet and the bacteria from your mouth is introduced to that little portion. That bacteria will grow, and will basically, that area is going to get spoiled. So you can't just bite on something and leave it there and come back to it 2 weeks later and expect that that beef jerky is not going to get you sick. So either finish it or take it into pieces. So if Armageddon happens, that's what you do. And in many cases, actually, a lot of Vietnamese dishes, they first dry that meat, then they chop it and then rehydrate it and cook it, and it gives that distinct taste to it. So many Asians do this, and it gives you that distinct taste of the pork, and you're like, how come when I cook it, it doesn't? Because they actually do this, and they dry the meat, and it causes it to break a certain way, and that's why they like, sometimes the steak tastes better because they've stored it, they've dried it. All right, then radiation is another example of what we do. So radiation, this is being used more and more nowadays because